Okay, we're live and good morning. I am Grace Marr, Chief Operating Officer with OTR Solutions, and I am here with...
I'm Inali Baez. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Simplex, and we've known each other, for like 10 years now, and it's kind of crazy that we've never sat in these two chairs doing something together.
It is wild. I'm so excited to be here in Miami at Simplex Group, and yes, nearly a decade, which so much has changed. Professionally and personally, it's been amazing to sort of grow with you and along. We've had a partnership for years, which is amazing. We do cash flow, you all do compliance.
Yep, compliance and permitting. So, I started on the trucking side. That's how I met Grace and OTR. I actually used to work for one of OTR's first larger fleets. And so that's how I kind of saw how special OTR really is and what they do for their customers and the value of cash flow and how important it is. I used to work on the accounting side. I'm a CPA. Yeah. And so that's kind of how my career started. And I came to trucking and brought that knowledge here and really seeing how much a factoring company can help your business grow and manage your cash flow on a day-to-day basis. But as far as Simplex, I came over to the Simplex side from the trucking side because I really believe that trucking companies, they do need a lot of help, right? They suffer and they go through so many challenges when it comes to expenses and managing them that I figured moving over to Simplex and kind of being a help to these trucking companies, making their life simpler would be great. So we do a lot of compliance, we do a lot of loss control, we do a lot of permitting and fuel taxes. So just a wide variety of things to help carriers.
Yeah, it's amazing. I forgot going back to the, public. I was in public accounting as well. We both have that in common and part of our background. I was an auditor for 5.5 years, which seemed like the natural progression to get into factoring because we have to purchase invoices. And so you got to make sure those are right. But we've worked together with Simplex for years. It's been amazing. We both work with the small carrier, the new authorities, fleets, needing compliance, cash flow help. And I think, there's so many tools out there for smaller carriers, which helps them compete with the larger trucking companies. And we're gonna dive into that today. So let's kick it over. Let's actually start a little bit and talk about the state of the industry. It has been an amazing year, right?
I don't know about a year. It's been a crazy few years.
Fair.
That's for sure. Ever since COVID. I mean, the industry always has its cycles, right? And that's part of what we've seen throughout all of these years. Like about every 3 years or so, we see a dip and then we see it rise back up. But what's happened over the last 5 is something like I've definitely never seen. And some of my colleagues who have been in the industry for 30, 40 years, they've never seen that as well. And so it's really been crazy with COVID and all the capacity issues and, carriers going out of business and freight rates. So it's definitely been insane.
Yeah. I mean, you did exactly what I normally do, where I'm talking about, if you are not familiar with trucking and you're not familiar with our industry, it is incredibly cyclical. So when the highs are high and the lows are low, and, most of us that have been doing this for a while will look at each other and go, okay, like we're due for an up year. And I think, to be honest with you, that's what everyone thought was going to happen in 2025. Like we are due, this is happening. And then tariffs hit. Okay. And immediately there's this idea of like, okay, if tariffs are here, freight volumes are going to go down. If freight volumes go down, then we have far too much capacity in the market, trucks to run the freight, which let me back up for a second. Most people unfamiliar maybe think that all these larger fleets are running the freight around the country. And really, it is almost 700,000 independent trucking companies, thousands upon thousands of owner-operators and drivers that move the freight. Whether you're a drayage driver or whatnot, it hits the rails, it gets to a warehouse, trucks have to take it, final mile, flatbed. I mean, all of it is affected when freight volumes change. And so tariffs all of a sudden made everybody go, wait a second, we may not actually be having a, successful freight year comeback, if you will, like we all thought 2025 was going to be.
Yeah, I think that there's still a lot of uncertainty. So we really don't know what's going to happen. I think not enough, there's been a lot of announcements, from the tariffs to the English proficiency. So a lot's changing very rapidly. And we see a lot of our customers, starting, to panic a little bit or be a little bit afraid, or they're asking, what's going to happen? How are things going to change? And, it's still tough to say what's really going to happen. But I think what we're seeing for sure is that we're not really going to see that comeback like we talked about. And so I think we were talking yesterday, and, it's probably going to be another year or two before we really think there's going to be an up, but there is a lot of uncertainty, especially also with fuel. A lot of things are happening politically, which is just kind of shaking everything up a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're just not sure. So I think everyone's just being cautious. Like we see our customers cautious, Simplex is cautious. I'm sure OTR is as well, into what's really going to happen and how do we adapt. So, staying on top of the news and what's going on and educating everybody, I think is extremely important.
100%. And in trucking, it is week by week, oftentimes there is absolutely seasonality. You look at produce season, which is typically like May to, July, and that should shift some of the capacity down to the Southeast, and moving freight, which typically makes volumes or freight rates rise. Haven't really seen a lot of that. Holiday freight would typically do the same.
Yeah.
Haven't seen a lot of that. And then obviously with tariffs, the, Port of Los Angeles, which typically brings in the majority of, Chinese freight, definitely saw a dip. And then all of a sudden the containers started coming in again, but still not a lot of change. But we were talking yesterday, and just even not to get political, but just even what's obviously going on with Iran, and then you see a jump in fuel.
Right.
That's the type of thing, though, that actually can hurt carriers almost immediately. Because if those fuel prices change too quickly and the brokers and the industry isn't adjusting the carrier pay, what happens?
Yeah, they get squeezed.
Yeah, and that's it.
And they're already squeezed.
Right now.
They're already really tough. I mean, with loads being down, driver pay's gone up insanely over the last few years. I mean,
COVID did that one, right?
Yeah, COVID did that one. And so now there's a driver shortage. They're having to pay their drivers more. Fuel's going up. Insurance is going up. There's just so much going on, and things aren't really behaving like as they should for these for the trucking companies to be profitable.
Totally.
So
what do you think, though, when you say like driver shortage? Sometimes I don't think there's necessarily a driver shortage. I think there is a knowledgeable driver shortage. Qualified. Like there's plenty of people coming into market. You can get the freight moved, but do you want to move it with that driver? And how do you really know, right? So it's actually finding the drivers that you want that will, and we're going to get into this from the compliance perspective. Definitely.
Key.
It is so important. It's almost like, you might have to pay the driver more, but it's actually less. Because if you get the cheaper driver, I won't skip ahead. I know.
There's a lot coming there.
But yes, I am worried. Insurance has never been, more expensive. That's not, I mean, how that continues to go up is unbelievable. Fraud has never been worse. It's just so sophisticated. I think what happened there personally is, during COVID, there was such a boom on the trucking side that there was a lot of investment in technology. But then as soon as, the recession began to happen, people had to pull back. And where do they pull back on first? Typically technology and innovation and things like that. And so some of the technology that had been introduced then didn't get the iterations, if you will, the 2.0 and the 3.0 to take it where it needed to go. And now all the fraudsters are going, okay, well, how do I infiltrate that? And the companies are going, wait, we have to up our security. We have to do more. We have to add this into the back end of that portal we made or that app we created. And personally, it's like everybody's playing catch up a little bit on shoring up the technology they created in a market that doesn't really support the cost of technology improvements. So,
definitely.
That's part of the issue as well. I do want to touch on the English speaking proficiency.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic right now, for sure.
We mentioned this, we were talking about this yesterday. Help the audience understand, is this a new thing?
No, it's actually not a new thing, and I think that's a big misconception. This has existed for many, many, many years, and so we have a lot of offices. We have offices here in Miami. We have offices in Texas and LA, and so we definitely have a wide variety of customers, right, and different types of drivers that we deal with. And throughout those that have been in the industry for a while, you guys have probably seen it, right? So what happens is that regulation gets tight and then it gets loose, right? So back, I would say maybe around 10 years ago, 2016 timeframe, it was very tight. So it was very difficult for like Latino drivers or any other ethnicity really to go out there, and they really needed to know English, right? They needed to be able to communicate in English, and so they would get violations and all that. So it was very tight then. Then with a different administration, they ended up loosening it, right? We need more drivers, trying to bring on more people into the trucks, from different countries that were coming in. And so they were coming in and it was a little bit more lax. So they weren't being as strict. Now the regulation has always been there. It's just really been, well, how tight or how strict are they being over the road? And so that's what's coming in now. It's more taking effect, right? Kind of bringing it back a little bit from what it was before. So again, that's just kind of been a cycle of being strict, then being a little bit loose, and then now it's coming in strict again. It's creating a lot of noise for sure, right? Because there's a lot of announcements of, like you said, there's tariffs, there's wars, right? So it's a lot of things happening at once, which is why everyone's like, well, wait a second, what's happening in the industry?
Right.
And so that's where that uncertainty is coming from. But, we definitely see a lot of people, trying to tighten up and make changes in their operation. We're trying to help drivers, some of our drivers and our customers, give them tools that they need to be able to learn English or know what to do when they get stopped by an officer. And so we're trying to give people tools that they need, but people really need to focus on training their drivers and making sure that they have the right drivers on their trucks to avoid any issues moving forward.
And so they will need to be able to answer things in English. Will they need to be able to walk around the truck and talk about their truck and point things out and speak proficiently in English?
They will need to speak proficiently in English for sure. They'll need to know basic questions on where are you going? Where are you coming from? Show me your cab card, show me you give me your hours of service, right? So they need to be able to answer those types of questions or know what's happening with their truck and their vehicle. So common things in trucking, they should be knowing how to speak. That's for sure. And then, so speaking, I believe it's the first round of questions, but if not, then they need to, one of the most important things is that they have to be able to read traffic signs.
Okay.
And so to really understand, because it's all really about being safe over the road, right? That's really the motive behind it. It's like, to be able to drive, you need to be able to read signs, you need to be able to be safe. And so if they don't pass kind of the first part, which is the speaking, the proficiency, then they make take a test on, well, what do the signs say? What is it telling you, to make sure that they can read the signs on the US roads?
And we talked about this also. Have you seen, first of all, 2 questions. Have you seen drivers being put out of service because of this yet? And 2, if there are states, and you don't have to name them, but do you think there will be potentially some states that are, easier or harder to sort of get through and pass? And will we see drivers potentially navigating around those geographical sort of hotspots?
Yeah, we definitely do see that. We see, well, some customers are deciding to downsize their fleets. So some people are just
they are. Okay, so they're taking capacity off the market.
Some are taking capacity off the market. So that's one way that they're mitigating it. Another way is definitely not going through certain states. And so you can probably see a lot in the news of what states those are and what they're trying to avoid. So that's definitely another thing. Now, what was your first question?
Have you seen carriers actually being put out of service because of this?
Yeah, definitely. We're starting to see, especially in certain states, we're seeing a lot more common to get put out of service. And so it's really challenging for these trucking companies because, especially if you're a one driver operation, you get put out of service, you have a load on you, like, what are you going to do?
Right.
And so it's very challenging. Like the bigger fleets have a little bit more capacity. I remember we used to fly out drivers to a different state to get on load to deliver it, right? Because we want to make sure that, we're having a good reputation and all that, and we want the loads to be delivered.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, but the small drivers or the small companies, they don't really have the capacity to do that. So it really, really puts them in a pickle.
Yeah. My phone just went off. We're live. And that's why if you heard a vibration, I'm like, okay, I need to put this over here, because when you're in a chair and your phone goes off, that's interesting. So, all right, we want to keep moving on. We want to talk about other things. And we're going to get into compliance at this point. I definitely want to talk about the cost of non-compliance. So many of our carriers, and I love that the OTR carrier base and the Simplex Group carrier base, they're essentially the same. I mean, we've got the carriers across the road. Everybody needs compliance. Everybody needs insurance help. Everybody needs permitting. Everybody needs IFTA. Let's talk about the cost of non-compliance and sort of putting it off, the art of procrastination. Why do we need compliance, and why should we be on top of that from like day one?
I think what people don't realize is, especially in a tough market, compliance is going to help you. It's going to be kind of your number one friend to make sure you stay in business, to make sure that you're being profitable. Because a lot of people really look at this like, oh, it's a cost, but it's really an investment, right? To be able to make your company grow. And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize. And people say compliance all the time. It's like, well, your driver qualification files and your vehicle qualification files, well, it matters in the event of an audit and all that stuff, but it's not, that's not why you would hire someone like Simplex, right? It's much more to say, well, how can I reduce my risk? How can I lower my losses? What action plans, what processes do I need to put in place to change my operation to bring more profits? And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize. They just think it's like, oh, we have to implement these things that the government says to do. And yes, of course, that's part of it, right? That's part of what we do. But it's really about, how do I change my trucking company and my operation to be able to be more profitable? And I think that that's what a lot of people don't realize. And they say, well, yeah, it's just another added expense, but it really isn't. You're really investing in the right infrastructure to hire the right drivers, to maintain your trucks properly, so that you can get, lower cost of insurance and, bring more to the bottom line.
So when we say like investing in compliance, what does that look like? Do they talk to you monthly? Do they, are you helping them along the way, understanding, what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong? Are you looking at their telematics? Are you providing, for those out there that don't necessarily have a strong compliance partner and understand, really, if you say, well, I'm going to go work with Simplex Group and I'm, and for compliance, and I'm going to invest in this. What does that look like?
So we have different ways that we can help customers. And so it really depends on their needs. So the first thing we do is that we go in and we kind of do a run through of their operation, right? What are you guys doing today for safety? We take a look at the risk, right? So we look at their ISS score. We look at the inspections that they had. Are they positive or are they negative?
Yeah.
So are they getting stopped? What types of violations out there? Are there certain trucks? We use data a lot, right? We say, okay, well, where are there certain trucks that are causing you your biggest headaches, right? Or causing you the biggest violations? Or are there drivers that are trending always with, certain other types of violations, or they always have brake issues and things like that? And so the first thing we really do is do a full analysis of the entire company. And then what we do is that we analyze that risk, and then we put together a safety action plan. And so what we do there is we said, okay, we saw this issue and this is how you mitigate it, right? So we give you the tools and the know-how on what you need to change and the steps that you need to follow to make those changes. And so that's kind of what we do to go in. And so we have different types of programs. Sometimes you'll be able to get a dedicated service account manager, and that person is your contact, kind of similar to an account manager at OTR, right? So you get an assigned account manager. You can call that person for anything. They're always going to be there for you, and they're going to be able to guide you in implementing this plan and following up, right? And so as things change, as you get better, we'll follow you throughout that whole time.
Which what I love about that is like when you think about the cost of compliance, it's far less than the cost of not having a compliance partner, if you will, or someone that's looking at all these things.
Yeah.
And then you get to the end of the year or, the end of your insurance, cycle, and you're going into a renewal period. And here you're hit with, in order to renew, it's like X dollars crazy. Because you didn't realize that your safety score was not as good as it should have been. If they are looking at the telematics and there was a driver that has been a problem all year that you could have mitigated earlier on, if you're adding drivers and don't realize, that's the biggest one. I don't think a lot of people realize that if you add a ton of drivers in the beginning of an authority, you're likely not getting renewed on your insurance. And people think, well, don't they want to see me grow? Don't they want to see me prosper?
Yeah, it's really kind of a backwards thinking type of thing. It's like counterintuitive in a way. It's like, well, don't you want me to succeed? But then it's like a red flag for them. And they're like, well, wait a second. Why are you growing so fast? What are you doing wrong? Right. Exactly. That's always the mentality of the underwriters.
Right. You're being too risky with your crazy growth. And, you work with a company like Simplex and they're telling you along the way, like, yes, you can add, but no, you should hold off now. Like, let's wait a couple months and get the insurance renewal under your belt, and then you can add again. You've got a partner that's really helping you lay the foundation for the business, or, you're already doing really well in these areas, but like, how could you be doing better? I always like to think that like the cost of something like this, the ROI is higher.
Definitely. It's like in the hundreds and thousands of percent. It's insane.
Yeah.
And especially like when you talk about insurance and you see how much premiums can change from, we've seen customers that, let's say that their first policy is $16,000 a truck. Mm-hmm. And then when they go in for renewal, it's at $22,000. So that's almost a 40% increase in their premiums from 1 second to the next, and they have to give a 20% down payment, right? Which is extremely difficult off of a higher amount versus that lower 16,000, and that really provides an impact. So a lot of underwriters, they're really interested in seeing that you have a good safety program. And so we've met with a lot of insurance carriers and they're like, wow, you guys provide the safety. Yeah. That's gold, right? Yes. And so they value and they write the risk differently if you have a compliance provider, similar to how many insurance companies, if you have the telematics, right, they're giving discounts and things like that. So we're seeing that in the industry as well, of everyone prioritizing the safety component and rewarding drivers as well with lower premiums or discounts if they have the right tools in place.
Right, as they should, right? Okay.
Yeah. Well, one thing I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about was brokers and pay and all that, because one thing we see on the safety side is that when you have a higher safety score, you're having safety issues, we don't see brokers loading those types of carriers as much. They want someone that's a little bit more stable and running. And so what we see is that sometimes when they have to load with the brokers that are less reputable, right? And so I know that there's a lot that happens right on the cash flow side and credit checks and all that. So maybe can you provide a little bit of color as to loading with the right brokers and all that?
Oh, absolutely. Great point. Whether you're a new authority or you're an established carrier, it makes a huge difference in what your average invoice size is. And it sort of makes sense, right? Like an established carrier likely has relationships in market, likely has a safety score that's, good and solid. And, for the carriers that are newer authorities, or maybe they've just started, they don't have a compliance partner and their safety score looks, worse compared to others. They might find freight, but they're going to find freight from the broker that's like, really can't get loaded by another established carrier because they're like, yeah, you don't pay top dollar. You pay inexpensively because, of the quality of carrier that you're willing to book. And you don't get the best communication maybe, and you're not going to get the detention and layover pay maybe that you deserve. And you're certainly not going to get lumpers paid for, you better, be prepared to pay those out of pocket. And just like
and collecting as well, right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a pain to collect from those brokers. I know that's for sure. You guys don't even buy them sometimes, right?
No, we don't buy them typically if the credit score on a broker is too low. And look, if we won't buy it, you shouldn't load it, to be honest with you. We have spent years and years creating the database around credit surrounding brokers and, who to work with and who not. And we feel pretty confident that, if it's someone that looks risky, they likely are. And so, that's the benefit of working with a company like ours is like when you do these broker checks, it's not like we're just going, hey, we have to make sure, we protect OTR, which is true. Obviously, if we're purchasing the asset, the invoice becomes our asset. We need to know we're going to get paid. But we also want carriers to be able to take any and every load they can, because when they run freight and they submit it to OTR, we want to be able to purchase it. If we say no to, all of these invoices, like that's not a great business for us.
For anybody.
No. So we're trying to purchase all the invoices that we possibly can. So if you're not approved with OTR, there's a reason. There's concerns around that, and so that's what I would say is also if you're a carrier with a lower safety score, to your point, you're not going to get loaded by the best brokers that treat the carriers the best and pay the value that they're worth. They're going to pay for quality carriers.
Yeah, because they have customers too, right? That they need to meet. They have the shippers. And so they got to make sure, if you think about it from the broker side, they have to make sure that their load gets there, right? And they want to get there on time. We want to get there undamaged, right? Want to make sure that the carriers are, if it's a refrigerated unit, that they're checking it, that they're pulping if they need to pulp. And so it's a lot that goes into delivering a load safely, which I know everyone here definitely knows. But they don't realize how much their safety score impacts that and the ripple effect, right? That it has from, picking that load all the way to collecting at the end for that load. And so, safety definitely has a lot to do with it for sure.
Well, and that's where too, like I wish as a whole, our industry was far more, technologically advanced. And what I mean by that is, the data around a carrier and the tools they're using is just not evident to all the brokers. In other words, like if I'm carrier ABC Trucking and I work with OTR Solutions and I have Simplex Group as my compliance partner, I'm in good shape. OTR's done the vetting on the carrier side ourselves. We're hand holding. We're trying to talk to them about how's their business? How are you doing? How are you finding freight? On your side, you're helping them with compliance and thinking about safety and taxes and permitting. If I'm a broker, I'm like, I want to load that carrier. I know if there's a problem, I get to deal with OTR. I know that likely they are, they care about safety and compliance because they actually have a partner. And so there are times where I'm like, I wish there was a way to tell all these brokers, these are the carriers that have all the right tools. I'm like, there has to be.
Insurance is moving that way. So I'm hoping that the brokerage side does as well, because, they should get rewarded. I mean, a broker should appreciate a truck not breaking down, right?
Absolutely.
With their load. And then it's like, well, if they can't repair it, then what's going to happen? And that, I guess that brings us to one of the other points that we had for the cost of non-compliance, but it's repairs and maintenance. When you don't do the proper maintenance and you don't do something as simple as your pre-trip inspection and your post-trip inspection, and you don't have a preventive maintenance program in place, all those things prevent, right, which is what the word says, these catastrophes from happening, because we've seen these trucks break down with a transmission. And how are you going to come up with $20,000 at that point? And you have a load on you. And again, you're a one truck operation. What do you do at that point? And so a lot of people say, no, I'm not going to do preventive maintenance because it's expensive, or I'm going to have to wait. Well, what's going to happen when you break down or you have a bigger issue and then you got to dish out thousands of dollars at once? Now you have a major cash flow issue. So that's another thing that we see happen quite a bit.
We have, on that note, also seen why is it so hard to get parts lately? After COVID, so many people, when they were down for a while because they couldn't find available truck parts. It was really crazy.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's gotten better, but I don't think so. But it's definitely a challenge, that's for sure.
Right, which is the preventive maintenance is such a big deal. All right, so let's pop back into driver recruiting and finding good drivers. What tips do you have?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize that one driver can cost you everything, right? They can get you a really high claim that you can't pay back because they didn't do things with the cargo properly, right? So there's a lot that can go wrong with the driver. And so when you have drivers under your MC, you're responsible for them. So whatever actions they take on the road really hit your MC. And so that's a big change, I think, that a lot of people don't realize when they drive for somebody.
Like
right?
the lease on drivers
Right.
are still your representation.
Correct. They're under your insurance. They have your signs on the truck, right? And so hiring and putting the right person on that truck is extremely important. So we really recommend having a very strong driver onboarding process to be able to make sure you have the right qualified drivers, as we spoke, on those trucks. So, the FMCSA really does a great job there in making sure that you have to follow certain steps and meet certain requirements to be compliant to be able to get on a truck. The issue we see is a lot of people want to get someone on the truck quickly. They have a load to move. We understand when trucks are grounded, you're spilling money.
Yeah.
We totally understand. We only make money right when the wheels are rolling.
Right.
And so a lot of people cut corners to get somebody on a truck. And so we really recommend that this is one of the most important things that you can do, right? Is making sure that they do simple things like filling out the application, doing your past employment verification, making sure, so important, that they do the pre-employment drug test and make sure that they're qualified to get on that truck. It's not advisable to put someone on a truck without receiving those results back.
Yes.
We have to run an MVR. We have to do, run the queries now as well for the clearinghouse. And so doing all these things is really important to make sure, okay, do they meet the qualifications to get on a truck? But then a lot of people then still put them on the truck immediately without training. And training is so, so, so important to make sure that they're following your policies and your procedures and they know what to do safety-wise once they get over the road, and continuing that training as things happen as well.
Yeah, I mean, some of my favorite trucking owners that we've worked with for a while, that started small and have grown, it's like they will walk out with a new driver and say, okay, do a pre-trip inspection for me. And be like, they have no clue what that means. You know what I mean? Like they've gotten all the licenses. They understand driving rules. They can actually move the truck, but like, can they really perform a pre-trip inspection the way you would want them to when they represent your company out there on the road? And so it's tips, and things like that, having these requirements to make sure you have the right drivers representing your MC, because even if they're leased on, technically they're leased on and they should be insured under your insurance. It doesn't matter if they carry their own, it will negatively affect your MC if you have lease on drivers that aren't doing the right things.
Yeah, and they really affect your scores. We've had situations where one driver, God bless you.
Thank you.
We have situations where one driver causes a whole alert to happen, right? And the alerts affect your safety scores, and safety scores, when they go up, you get stopped more. Now you have more downtime, and you have more risk of, getting more violations. And if those accumulate, then you get audited. So it's, like I said, it's really a ripple effect, and people don't realize how what looks like a small mistake to try to cut a corner, make more revenue, ends up costing them more in the long run. And so, we see all these things that we talked about, adding to thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And like some of these figures, 35 to 50,000, it's per truck.
Yes.
Right. So it's extremely significant how all these things can add up and affect your bottom line.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And so I do want to share with you, though, a quick story on a customer that we had it's really, really been successful. And we're super proud of, helping this customer. They had an ISS score, so a safety score of 90. And so typically when you're, 75 and above, you're definitely red or, high risk. And so they had a 90 safety score. They had 3 alerts in their basic categories. And so they were definitely being flagged. They were definitely being stopped quite a bit. A lot of violations with their inspections. And so they came together with Simplex, and We did tell them, we always warn people, we don't wave a magic wand.
Right.
And all of a sudden, we hit it, and now your safety score, because you hired Simplex, is now, 46.
Right.
It doesn't
you can't
really work
buy
like
it
that.
down, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
You have to be able to make the changes in your operation, as I was talking about. And so we went in there and we said, well, we did the risk assessment and we put together the safety action plan. And one of the things that they struggled with was vehicle maintenance. They had a vehicle maintenance alert. And so we put together that preventive maintenance program, which now they're following. Their drivers are now trained.
Yeah.
And so now they get ongoing training as well with each and every violation they receive. So now anytime, let's say Grace gets a violation, they get hit with a training video, they have to take a quiz, and they have to pass it, and all of that gets recorded.
Oh, that's great.
And that really helps the owner make great decisions on what to do or what they should be doing with those drivers. And so we put together a bunch of training. We put together policies and procedures for them as well. And now about a year later, again, it's taken work. The owner was very receptive to making the change and saying, yeah, we can't continue the way we're going. We're going to lose our company and it's not going to work out. And so now they have no alerts and they have a safety score of 46. And so it's really been a success story. They said they're getting better loads. They said that their profitability is improving. And so it really shows that it works, right? It just really takes partnerships, right, to be able to make that happen, to work together to make impact.
I love that. That's amazing. That's one of those real life case studies that shows that compliance matters and truly it does make the business more profitable, which moves us into cash flow and factoring and the cash flow revolution, which I love obviously talking about the importance of reliability in cash and getting paid on time and setting the foundation for, lasting trucking operation, which I always like to say, trucking companies that factor with OTR are 30% more likely to be in business after a year than trucking companies who aren't. Meaning you're thinking, well, but don't I have to pay for that as a service? You do, right. But if you're working with OTR, a factoring company, it's so much more than that. And years ago, we used to say OTR is so much more than a factoring company. But today we really are, when you think about getting paid on time, working with the right brokers and all the data that OTR wants to provide. But more so, I'm really super excited because, we have a product. We are now going to be launching Truly Instant Funding
That's so exciting.
I know, in the next month, which means that carriers can get paid at any time, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 24/7 funding, if you will, and they get paid in minutes. And so it's really exciting. It's something we've been working towards for the past, year, because carriers run all day, right? This is not a 9 to 5.
24/7 business.
It's a 24/7 business.
365 days a year.
Yes. It's funny. My dad, I remember him once saying you can't work retail because I don't want you working holidays, but somehow I end up in trucking. So go figure, but I love it. And I'm so glad I love what I do. You love what you do.
Love it. I love it. I mean, that's why maybe we moved from accounting to something so, boring to something that changes every day and is exciting. Now I think we went to the other extreme because it's wait, what do we do?
Right.
But it's a lot more fun.
Oh,
that's for sure.
It's amazing. And honestly, not to divert from Truly Instant Funding, but I do want to talk about, everything that we utilize, I truly think what we do matters. Working in trucking, it's, the backbone of the American economy and, all of our livelihoods and, everything I use for my family, everything, it's not lost on me. It all moves on a truck, and when we talk to our carriers day in and day out, and we say we really do want to make your business a more successful trucking business, it's because that's their livelihood. We're helping entrepreneurs out on the road that are functioning 24/7 themselves to move freight for American families. I don't know. It's kind of a big deal.
And I think that that's what brings us, so close together as partners is that we both really believe in that, and
That's
all of
right.
our people do as well. Like we call our employees simplificators, right?
Yeah.
Because we want to make it simple for
Yes.
the trucking companies, and so that's kind of what we're built on. But we tell them every day, it's like, think about everything you see in a room. It is all moved by a truck.
Yeah.
And so, you're so lucky to be able to work for an industry like this. It has so much impact, but you don't realize it in your day to day. And like you said, most carriers are small.
Right.
So it's even, I think, more beautiful, right? That you see it's like these small companies, right, really living the American dream. And I think it's just such a wonderful thing. So it's a pleasure to really work to help them grow.
Right. And give them those tools that help them compete with the larger trucking companies. I think years ago it was, everyone was worried, like, are the larger fleets, like, is legislation and regulation, is that all to sort of, absorb the smaller trucking companies and create just like fleets that move the freight? And honestly, no. I think that's the beauty of, how fragmented the industry is actually, is that it allows for so many carriers to come in to, this industry and create businesses and, have livelihoods here, which obviously in great markets, you'll see social media and influencers talking about how many, how incredibly successful it is or they can be. And it is. I mean, it is a lucrative business when the economy is strong and trucking is doing well. But right now, sometimes I get surprised we see as many authorities kind of coming in, but
yeah, they're still coming in, which is what's pretty crazy. Like the capacity definitely still hasn't
Yes.
leveled out, which we thought it would have by now, but
Yes.
surprisingly it hasn't.
That's right. So you see these new authorities coming in and you say, okay, well, what do you need to be successful? And, factoring is one of those things, especially, being able to know who you should be running freight for, being able to get paid on time every time. Not all factoring companies are created equal. There are different types of programs out there. There's different types of rates. God, I've been doing this for far too long. The first question I always get asked is, what's your rate? And I think to myself, like, such a short-sighted question, because not all rates are created equal either. No. I can put a flashy 1% in front of you or less than, but is it truly effectively 1%? And that's why I've always said, OTR, we have free contract review. Send me your contract. I will break it down for you. I'll tell you exactly what you're getting paid. We have a sales team that will do that as well. But since we're here, I will tell you, like, I will jump on a phone and tell any carrier that this is effectively what that factoring rate truly looks like when you break down the different terms, which there are,
Yeah, and I think people don't realize too on the factoring side is there's a whole team. It's not even just your account manager, right?
Right.
There's like collections and invoice verifications, and there's a lot behind it, right? So, that percentage goes a long way. It buys you a lot, right? It buys you just more than just getting that invoice advance, right? You're buying, a team of experts. You guys have great relationships with some of the brokers as well, right? And so I think that there's a lot more too behind those percentages that a lot of, other people, they kind of cut the corners as well, and they won't verify the invoices and they'll pay things out, but then you'll see a bunch of chargebacks coming in, and then it becomes a lot more challenging to be able to manage versus OTR. I think you guys deal with most of it up front, right? So to avoid issues later, right?
Yes, I love that you brought that up. Thank you. It's so true. I was like just thinking, like, it's peace of mind in the purchasing. And what I mean by that too is, like, most of the time when people say, like, great customer service or they do a great job, you're like, that's table stakes, right? Like, everybody says they have great service and everybody says that they do a good job. And I'm like, no, like, it matters up front, not that you can just get someone on the phone, not that you can just make sure that you're getting paid, but that you're getting paid right every time. Because, truthfully, anyone can just buy an invoice and then be like, if it doesn't pay, we'll charge it back.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality of a lot of people out there. But, like, truthfully, that could put a small carrier out of business. Like, you get overpaid by $500, $1,000, and then 2 weeks later, it just comes out of your next factoring schedule, and you're like, wait a second.
You have to pay all your bills.
Yeah, I've got a truck note and insurance payment due today. Why did you just pull $500 out of my payment? Oh, well, that invoice that we bought 30 days ago was short paid, and you're like, but wait, I guess it does matter that I get paid correctly every time and that it's verified and that the, OTR does the due diligence. And that's what's so important, getting carriers paid quickly and getting them paid correctly every time.
And day by day cash flow changes, right? And it's important. I mean, I remember working on the trucking company side, and it's like you manage it daily,
Yeah.
right? It's every single day, schedule by schedule and payment by payment. It's insane on how much cash needs to flow in and out of a trucking business, right? And so really without factoring, it makes it extremely difficult waiting, 30, 60, 90 days to get paid and then doing all the chasing yourself, for those amounts and all that. And so it's insane how much it really helps.
Well, that's a great point too, because when I first came into this industry, everybody just assumed if you had a factoring company, it's because you were struggling. You weren't managing money well, you're not doing it well,
No.
So you must be suffering, you have a factoring company. It's not the case anymore at all. I think factoring rates have become so competitive, people realize it's actually cheaper to outsource your invoicing and your back office operations than it is to employ your own people or to have, your daughter or your wife or your husband or, a cousin be trying to manage your back office for you. And it's like, well, wait, did we get paid on that? And I don't know exactly where to bill that. And, if you do have someone that you need to employ, well, they probably need a computer and they want time off too. And they're not going to work for you every day. And maybe they get sick and now they need training on certain things. Mm-hmm. And after all that,
do permitting and compliance and insurance renewals and everything else.
And they don't have the expertise. We are experts at what we do. We're working 24 hours, 7 days a week to make sure that we're doing things right. We're experts in our field. We're tracking rates. We're tracking broker credit. We see who in market is struggling and saying, hey, don't pull for big broker whatever, because we recognize there's problems. And, all of a sudden carriers are like, wow, thank you. We'll also go to bat for carriers. Like, what do you mean you're not paying the layover detention? Oftentimes people don't realize we're advocating for our carriers in claims and in short pays before we ever have to go charge something back. So it truly matters to us. But this, truly instant funding, like I said, this summer, we're already piloting it now. We're paying carriers at 2:00 in the morning, get paid the way you want to, when you want to, instantly.
So how does that work? Does that mean that there's no cutoff times anymore?
That's no cutoff
thing of the past?
That's right. You submit an invoice once it's verified and approved. It shows up in your mobile app and literally says you can get paid now. You click, I want my money now, and instantly you're paid within less than a minute.
Wow.
It's in your bank account.
So it kind of works like a wire.
Yeah, it works like a wire, but faster, and it's right in your bank account instantaneously at any time of day.
Wow. And will they be able to choose which loads they want to use the instant pay for, or wire, or ACH, or will they always have to use it? How does that work?
Honestly, it's the same way. We're going to verify and approve an invoice like we would, normally, and we do today. It's just that once it's approved and verified, if you want to get paid, if you want to get paid right then and there, you can say, pay me now. And we do. Otherwise, it defaults to your payment setting that you might have that, an ACH, which allows you to get paid the next day.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a game changer.
It is.
To be honest, for trucking.
It truly is. And it's, like I said, I want to make sure it's differentiated from some of the other instant payments that are out there where maybe it goes into a wallet instantly, but then you have to pay money to transfer it into your bank account. It's not the same thing. With OTR, when we say we truly instantly fund you, we truly instantly fund you to your bank account within minutes. Not just to a wallet where it's held and then you have to spend money to transfer it out of there into a bank account, which is totally different.
So when will this be ready, Grace?
Well, like I said, we're piloting it right now, and then we are launching this summer. I want to say we're launching just in a few weeks, but I want to give our tech team, we want to make sure that when we roll this out, it's perfect.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
so exciting. That's
Yeah.
gonna really set you guys, when you guys are already set apart. And I remember when I first visited OTR, I was with another factoring company. And so I went up to OTR and I was so impressed with their operation. Like I've really seen it firsthand, from the trucking company side. So definitely in your shoes. And it's really impressive, what they've built there. And I remember when I got there, they're like, we will always pick up the phone.
Yep.
Right. And I know you said that there's a lot more than that, which there is, but a lot of times I remember calling my old account manager and it was like nothing. It was silence, and you need money now, right? You have problems that you need to solve. And so you call your account manager and they're like, someone will pick up. Anybody will pick up. And I remember hearing that phone ring, and it really didn't go to voicemail ever. It's like someone will pick up to answer your phone. And that's the kind of partner that you need, honestly, is someone that will always be there and pick up the phone whenever you need it.
I appreciate you saying that. And it's so true. It's like, I always say money is so personal. And, when you need to get someone on the phone about money and, because we don't know, like I also have always said, like, you don't know if that invoice today is paying a truck note or insurance, or it could be buying a birthday cake. Like right before Thanksgiving and Christmas, I'm always like, those are the presents under the tree. Those are the turkeys on the table. Those are, like if someone submits an invoice today, like the Friday before a holiday, like that could be buying a birthday cake. Like we don't know, but if they submit an invoice, we know that somebody thinks they're getting paid. And so it's really important that we do that. It's really important that they can get us on the phone. And it's amazing. Like one of the operational problems I have most is trying to help solve the team's phone calls. You would not believe the thousands of phone calls we still get. And honestly, it's carriers that just want to call in sometimes and talk to us and be like, do you have my invoice?
Oh, yeah.
But really, like, it's like, of course you can see it in the app. We have the invoice, and like but it's also just we have relationships with our carriers. And so, recently we actually implemented AI, which transfers. We now know the phone number of the carrier. And so we also know the account manager, and we're transferring the phone calls themselves directly to the team. 82% of calls got transferred 2 weeks ago. Like when we implemented this, it was the most amazing lift. And I say that because like the service part matters. Like how do we get the carriers to the team that they need to talk to that can help them more quickly, as we grow, because we always want to get that personal touch, and it does matter.
Yeah, we're so big on that as well. I mean, I think technology, like you said, is changing in the industry, and we've seen a lot more adoption to technology over the last few years. Like the technology when we met, ELDs weren't even implemented, right?
I know.
So it's just still paper logs and all that. And so it's crazy to see how much technology is starting to change and move it. But I think a lot of companies are going to only technology, right? And that makes it difficult as well. Like you said, they're driving a truck every single day for, 11 hours a day. And so they want to just talk to somebody sometimes. And I think that balance of, giving the right tools for technology, but then always having somebody to talk to and need it. I think that's the most important thing, for a carrier to feel supported and really understand what they're going through, because they could have very simple questions. But if, you're trying to get through a chat, or you're trying to get to somebody and you're pressing 0 and 0 doesn't exist, right? Because you can't get to an operator, that's extremely frustrating. Like I know we've probably called places on our personal lives, and it's like, you can't get through to somebody. You're just like, I just want to talk to somebody right now. And so I know that they go through that as well. So I think it's extremely important that there's always somebody there to talk to them as well.
Yeah, my personal threshold for poor customer service is
that
so
we've learned that
low.
for sure.
I'm like, what my livelihood is like on, trying to give people the best experience. Like, like listen to my entitlement. I'm like, yeah, I deserve the best too. But no, all joking aside, like it does matter immensely, especially because it is money, and that's a carrier's livelihood. So,
so I guess what's the importance? Let's talk a little bit about partnership, right?
Yeah.
So we've, known each other for almost 10 years. So, what would you recommend to trucking companies? Who should they surround themselves with, and who should they, work with and have as part of their team?
Yeah, it's a great question because, nowadays with new authorities and trucking companies, I mean, there is so much targeted, advertising that probably hits every carrier, and you're getting into market. Look, it's your business, it's your terms, you get to pick your partners. And the best thing that you can do is honestly really research who you're about to be working with. Like, look at the Google reviews, look at the tenure of these companies, look at the tools and, everything that they're going to be providing for you. But like, honestly, I mean, I truly think this is an amazing partnership. We've obviously been doing this for over a decade, and we've seen in the data too, the tenure of the carriers that have mutually worked with both of our companies for a very long time. It works when you have the right partners. You're setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, I mean, most companies, one of the things that Simplex does is that we stand up UMCs. So when there's, you're a house driver, you're an owner operator, and you're saying, hey, I'm ready to enter with my own authority, one of the things we do is we help you get set up from the very beginning, just, doing your applications and all that, and, helping you get your insurance and helping you get the right ELD, which, we have as well, with the right telematics and all that, and set you up with OTR and get you all the right permits and get you your safety. So we really help companies, grow from, owner operator to 1 truck and 2 truck and so on and so forth. But so many times, they'll get here and they'll be like, I've been driving for 20 years.
Yeah. I
know exactly what to do. Don't tell me what to do. But then, like we spoke earlier, people don't realize how much more you need to do when you're not leased on. There's so much that the MC carrier has to do. In terms of safety, insurance. Now they're dealing with factoring. Before, you were just getting paid a percentage of your load or, per mile or however you got paid. Now you're going to have to deal with, well, what to charge back? What does that mean? What permit do I need to be able to operate? What do I do when I get these violations? What do I do when I get my new entrant audit? Every single account or trucking company gets audited in the first 18 months.
That's right.
Of getting their authority. And so you really need a partner. And so there's a lot behind the scenes that needs to happen. And it's so hard. I mean, I admired truck drivers like you can't imagine, right? Because they wear so many different hats and they just do so much, and they have to keep up with the driving, and they have to inspect their truck.
It's dangerous.
There's so much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so impressive, what truck drivers do and truck owners do every single day. I've never really seen anybody wear as many hats, honestly, as they do. But definitely having the right partner, I think, really helps make that easier, right? Because sometimes even hiring a person, if you're a mid-sized trucking company, hiring a full-blown safety manager, hiring a full-blown team of everything to do, everything from the A to the Z, it's expensive, right? And so just hiring a few experts to do it every day and, have hit their heads a couple times and figuring out the right processes and always on the news and trying to figure out regulations and all that, it can be extremely helpful. So I really think that that's a key tool that we wish more people would take advantage of from the very beginning versus going with the cheaper rate or let me try to do it myself and hitting their heads a couple of times.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it does matter. And like I said, the return on investment, what you're getting in return, and the data proves that with the right partners, you're more likely to succeed than not having those partners at all. Well, this has been amazing. And I mean, we've gone almost, I think, an hour.
I know, I can't believe it.
It's crazy. I feel like we don't actually have time for questions, which makes me really sad, but all the more proof that we need to do this
more often.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, so I think what we're gonna do is we'll probably post the questions on social media. We'll try to record ourselves, or we'll figure it out. Don't worry, we'll definitely get to your questions and try to answer most of them. But in order to see those answers, please follow us on social media. OTR Solutions and Simplex Group. please hit that like button, follow us, and we definitely will promise that we'll do this more often, number
Yes.
one, and number two, that we'll post all those answers to those questions. I really hope everyone had a great time and learned something new, and the value of having a partner.
Yes, it's been amazing. Hope you all have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us live, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.
Keep on trucking.